You know, that pain was so overwhelming, it felt like it seeped through every pore and became part of my very blood. I lived with it for 7 long years. It started in my back, ran down my spine, and choked in my throat every time I heard that key turning in the door at 6 p.m. And with that key's sound came the fear. That fear, even now at 71, still wakes me up in a sweat in the middle of the night. Good morning to everyone watching. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Emily Harper, but folks in Springfield, Tennessee, know me as Grandma Emily's Candies. I make soft candies, peanut butter fudge, and crispy peanut brittle that everyone says is the best in the area. I've had my little stall at the main Plaza Farmers Market for over 40 years. Who would have thought? Right. The little girl who wasn't sure she'd live to see the next day is now famous for her sweets. Those sweets brought joy to children. I was born in 1954 in a small yellow house at the end of Oakwood Lane, in the poor part of Springfield, a small town where everyone knew each other, or at least thought they did, because secrets were hidden behind closed doors. And our yellow house, with its wooden windows always shut, had the worst-kept secrets of all. My father, Robert, was an inspector for the county, a respected man in town with a firm hand that slammed tables and a deep voice that shook the floor. He went to church every Sunday, sitting in the front row, singing hymns louder than anyone else. He was the first to arrive at neighborhood meetings and the last to leave the corner bar. A man of his word, they said. The perfect family man. My mother, Margaret, was an elementary school teacher, always with her hair pinned up, wearing dresses down to her knees, and short nails. She had a rigid posture, and the way she looked over her glasses made any misbehaving student straighten up. At home, she was quiet, obedient, like a shadow of my father. A shadow that grew and shrank with his moods. It was just the 3 of us in that yellow house. My mother had other children, but none survived. I was the only one. I was the only one who made it through. She called it a miracle from God. Sometimes I thought the real miracle would have been not surviving. It would have spared so much pain. The house was simple, but clean. I remember the smell of floor polish, the shine of the few pieces of furniture, and the crocheted tablecloths my mother made to cover everything. There was a backyard with a few apple trees, a cherry tree, and a laundry tub where I used to play on hot days. That yellow house, my own heaven and hell. Until I turned 7, my life was normal. I went to school, played with neighbors, helped my mother with little chores. My father was strict, often slapping me when I disobeyed. But back then, that didn't seem unusual. That's how kids were raised in those days, with slaps, belts, and switches from willow trees. No one questioned it. But everything changed when I turned 8. I remember that day exactly. It was my birthday. I got a blue polka dot dress and a cloth doll that my mother had secretly made. I was so happy that I didn't notice the difference in my father's eyes during lunch. A look that I later recognized. It was the look of someone planning something. That night, my mother went to church for prayer. That was normal. On the first Friday of every month, there was a prayer meeting, and she never missed it. I was left alone with my father, which had happened before. Usually, he'd send me to bed early and stay in the living room listening to the radio. But that day was different. "Come here, Emily," he called from the kitchen. "Come help your father." I walked over with my new doll tucked under my arm. He was leaning against the sink, staring at the wood stove. "Look at this sink, girl. It's filthy. Your mother didn't clean it properly." I looked at the sink. To me, it seemed clean. But disagreeing with my father wasn't an option. "I'll tell Mother when she gets back," I whispered. "No, you'll clean it right now." I tried to explain that I was too small, that I couldn't reach, that the cold water from the tap hurt my fingers in Tennessee's mild winter. But it was no use. I climbed up on a stool and started washing a few dishes. I did my best. But like any 8-year-old, I made childish mistakes, splashed water, left soap on the plates, didn't dry them right. That's when it all began. "Do you see why your mother never wanted more kids after you? Because you're no good at anything." Those words hurt more than any slap. I hung my head and kept trying. I hung my head and kept cleaning, tears blurring my eyes. "You can't even do this right. Useless." "Do you know what happens to useless girls? They deserve to be punished." He grabbed the broom from the corner of the kitchen, a straw broom with a wooden handle. I thought he'd use it on my legs like he had before. But no, "Take off your clothes." I froze. I didn't understand. Why would an 8-year-old girl undress in the kitchen? What was happening? "Are you deaf?" "Take them off." Now the fear paralyzed me. I hugged my doll tighter. "Daddy, it's too cold. Take them off now." His shout was so loud that I dropped the doll on the floor. With trembling hands, I took off my new dress. I stood there in just my underwear, hunched over, trying to cover my skinny body with my arms, everything. Take it all off. And there, naked in the kitchen, I felt a shame I'd never felt before. A shame mixed with fear and confusion. Why would a father want to see his daughter like this? He picked up the broom. He pressed the wooden handle against my stomach and started moving it down. Slowly. I felt the cold wood on my skin. I closed my eyes. "Look at me." I couldn't. I kept my eyes shut, my whole body shaking. "Look at me." I opened my eyes. I saw a man who was no longer my father. He looked like a monster with that hungry gaze. What happened next? I won't describe in detail. Not out of shame, I've washed that away long ago, but because there might be children watching this video, and I don't want to put those images in their innocent minds that still haunt me. All I'll say is that it hurt. It hurt so much I thought I was going to die. That broom handle. He used it in a way no object should be used, no child should feel, no father should do. When it was over, I was bleeding. He threw my clothes at me. "If you tell anyone, I'll kill you and your mother. Now, clean up this floor." I could barely stand. I wiped up my blood on the kitchen floor while he went back to the living room to listen to the radio, as if nothing had happened, as if he'd just destroyed his daughter moments ago. I dragged myself to my room, wrapped up in the blankets, and cried until I had no tears left. The physical pain was terrible, but the pain in my soul was worse because I didn't understand what I'd done wrong. Why would my father, the one who was supposed to protect me, do this? When my mother came home, I thought about telling her. She came into my room and saw I was awake. "What's wrong?" "Girl, I couldn't sleep." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The fear was too great. What if he followed through on his threat? What if he killed us in the end? I just shook my head and drifted off to sleep. "Tomorrow, you have school." And she left, closing the door behind her. Just like that. She didn't see my tears, didn't notice my fear, or maybe she pretended not to. That night, something died in me, my trust, my safety, my childhood. I thought it was just a one-time punishment for not cleaning the sink. Right. But I was wrong. In the weeks that followed, whenever my mother went out, he found a way. There was always an excuse. The house wasn't clean. I was late from school. My grades weren't good enough. He'd say, "Get the broom." And I obeyed. Because what else could an 8-year-old girl do against a grown man? The worst part came when I realized my mother knew, or at least suspected. One night, I came home from school with my dress muddy from falling on the way. My father was furious. He ordered, "Go to your room." You know what was coming. I was shaking. He grabbed the broom and came after me. But this time, I noticed the door wasn't fully closed. Through the crack, as I writhed in pain on the bed, I saw my mother standing in the hallway, watching. Our eyes met in that horror. She saw my suffering and my silent plea. And do you know what she did? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. She slowly closed the door and walked away. That's when I understood true betrayal. Not just from him, but from her too. The one who should have protected me, shielded me, fought for me against the world, chose to turn away. That night, I cried differently, not just from the pain, but from complete abandonment. I was alone in this world, facing the two of them by myself. The abuse went on for months, years, becoming more frequent, more violent. He didn't even wait for my mother to leave anymore. He did it in front of her, and she watched, sometimes looking away, sometimes with that strange gaze, never intervening, never protecting me. Once, I tried to fight back. I was 10 by then, a bit older and stronger. When he came with the broom, I pushed him, tried to run. I headed for the front door, but my mother blocked the way. "Where do you think you're going?" "Emily, let me go." "Mother, please go back there. Your father's not done yet." And she pushed me back to him like someone returning a borrowed toy. Changes started happening in my body. My chest grew, my hips widened. And when I had my first period, I tried to hide it as best I could. I was afraid it would make things worse. And it did. Because now, my father had a new fear. That I'd get pregnant. "If you bring some bastard into this world, I'll kill you," he threatened. "I'll throw you in the river where no one can find you." But he still used the broom. He just became more careful and found new ways to hurt without leaving marks. At school, I became the strange girl, silent, always in long sleeves, even in hot weather, sitting at the back of the class. I didn't play at recess, didn't talk to anyone, never smiled. My grades, which used to be good, plummeted. I couldn't focus. How could you pay attention to English when your whole body ached? How could you learn math when all you thought about was the horror waiting at home? Of course, the teachers noticed something was off, but back then, it was different. Don't get involved in family matters. That saying applied to everything. Family problems stayed family problems. Only one teacher persisted. Miss Susan, my history teacher. She was short, always tying her curly hair back, with big glasses sliding down her nose. She had a way of looking at me not with pity or disgust, but with understanding. One day, she asked me to stay after class. "Emily, is everything okay at home?" That simple question almost broke me. No one had asked about me in so long. I opened my mouth to say yes, as I always did. But I couldn't. Tears just poured out. No. I finally answered. Nothing was okay. But I didn't say more that day. The fear was still bigger than the pain. The fear of what he'd do if he found out I'd spoken, afraid they wouldn't believe me. After all, who would believe a troubled girl against two upstanding adults in town? "If you need to talk, I'm here," she said simply. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't completely alone. I was 13 by then. 5 years of daily abuse. 5 years of my childhood stolen. My body violated. My spirit broken. 5 years of watching my mother enable my suffering. 5 years of wishing to die each night and waking up in disappointment, knowing I was still alive the next morning. That's when things got even worse. The yellow house wasn't just my private hell anymore. It became a real prison. My father started locking the doors when he left to keep me from talking to anyone. That broom, always that same broom, leaned in the corner like a constant threat. I'd look at it and shudder, even when I was alone. I began having terrible nightmares. I'd wake up screaming and sweating. Sometimes I'd wet the bed. At 13, an age that should have been about rebellion and fun, I was barely speaking. I was hardly surviving. But a spark of anger started building in me. At first, it was just a small flame, but it grew. Anger at the injustice, the pain, the betrayal. That anger turned into courage when I realized something. If I kept going like this, I wouldn't survive. Plain and simple. Either I had to speak up, or I'd die. Everything changed on a Wednesday, a regular Wednesday. The sky was blue, the sun blazing hot. The broom had been used the night before after I dropped a glass in the kitchen. I could barely sit in my chair at school. I was in so much pain. Miss Susan noticed. She noticed how I moved, uncomfortable, how I held back tears. At the end of class, she asked me to stay, this time. She locked the classroom door. "Emily, what's happening at your house?" I stayed silent and looked at the floor. "Emily, look at me." I looked. In her eyes, I saw something I'd never seen in my mother's genuine compassion. No one deserves to suffer. Emily, no one. Especially not children. If someone's hurting you, you can tell me. I'll help you. And after 5 years of silence, I spoke. The words poured out like a flood, uncontrolled, raw, and destructive. I told her everything. The broom, the blood, the pain, how my mother watched, the threats, the fear, all of it. She listened without interrupting, without judging. When I finished, she was exhausted, tears in her eyes. "I believe you" were the most important 3 words I'd ever heard. I believe you. And we'll fix this. That afternoon, on the way back to the yellow house, I felt something different in my chest. I didn't know what to call it then. Later, I realized it was hope. Do you know what betrayal really is? It's not just a husband cheating. Betrayal is when the person who's supposed to protect you turns their back when you need them most. It's worse than any slap. It's a wound that never heals. That's what I experienced with my mother. Elaine, a woman who taught the alphabet to hundreds of children in Springfield, but couldn't teach her own husband that his daughter wasn't an object. A woman who said the rosary every day, but closed her eyes to the sin happening under her own roof. At first, I thought she didn't know, so she didn't care. How could a mother see her 8-year-old daughter limping in pain and not ask? How could she see blood-stained sheets and pretend it was normal? I came up with 1,000 excuses for her in my mind. Maybe she didn't see. Maybe she didn't understand. Maybe she was scared too. But that night, when our eyes met through the door crack as my father used the broom, all excuses vanished. She knew. She'd always known. By then, I was exactly 10. I'd been abused daily for nearly 2 years. My body was covered in wounds. Not just the bruises that faded, but the invisible ones that never did. Like how I flinched at loud voices. The habit of sleeping under the bed instead of on it. The fear of brooms, doors slamming, belts. Around that time, my mother started getting more involved. Not in the abuse itself, that was just my father, but in the setup, the aftermath. Like it was part of the family routine, as routine as washing dishes or sweeping the floor. "Emily, go take a bath. Your father's coming soon." She'd say it in the same tone as telling me to do my homework, casual, as if it were normal. As if every house on the street had the same sick ritual. I obeyed. What else could I do? I had nowhere to escape, nowhere to run. The house was small, windows locked, doors keyed, and even if I got out, where would I go? We were isolated. I had no family nearby, no close friends. I only went to school, and even there, I was the strange girl no one wanted to be near. One afternoon, I got home a little late. I was delayed because the teacher made me stay to erase the board, a small punishment for dozing in class. When I walked in, my mother was knitting in the living room as if nothing was wrong, but I felt it in the air, the thick scent of trouble brewing. Your father's. Waiting in the bedroom. I stopped in the living room, my backpack slipping off my shoulder, fear freezing my stomach. "Mother, please." I was late because I didn't care. "He's waiting. Go before it gets worse." Worse? As if there was a lighter version of that horror. "Mother, I'm begging you." My voice choked. "Why are you letting this happen? Why won't you help me?" Finally, she looked up from her knitting. But I didn't see love there. I saw something else, resentment. "Do you think you deserve help? If you were a good daughter, obedient, he wouldn't have to correct you." That's how she called it. Like it was a correction, a guidance. As if shoving a broom handle into a child was some kind of teaching method. But mother? This isn't normal. It hurts so much. He shouldn't do this. I didn't finish. The slap came fast and stinging. She'd never hit me before. She had her flaws. But physical violence wasn't one of them until that day. "Shut up. Do you think it's easy for me? You think it's easy? He's your father. He has rights. And you provoke him. With a body like that, it's no wonder. Tears streamed down. She said it was my fault, that a 10-year-old girl, had brought it on myself, that I deserved it, that it was normal. Now go. Don't keep him waiting any longer. That was the first time she laid a hand on me, and it wasn't the last. From then on, her complicity became clearer. She started preparing the scene, bathing me first, making sure I was presentable for my father. Afterward, she'd strip the bed, wash the stained sheets, and tend to the most visible wounds so no one at school would notice. It was like there were two monsters in the house. Not just one. I remember one time I was sick, high fever, body aches, probably a bad flu that could knock anyone out. I thought at least that day I'd have some peace. My mother made tea, put a cool cloth on my forehead. For a moment, I felt the care every child deserves. I closed my eyes, almost relieved. Then, my father walked in. I felt the mattress sink under his weight as he sat down. I opened my eyes, silently begging my mother, begging her to protect me just this once. Do you know what she did? She left, closing the door behind her, leaving me there, feverish, too weak to fight. That night, the broom came even though I was ill. In fact, it was worse because he said he needed to cure me, that it was the only way, that it was for my own good. When it was over, my fever spiked worse. I was shivering. I was delirious. I heard my mother arguing with him on the other side of the door. Robert, are you trying to kill the girl like this? And then what? How will you explain it to people? It wasn't about me. It was about the scandal, the neighbors talking to her. I wasn't even a person. I was just a potential embarrassment. I was bedridden for a week. The school sent a note asking about my absence. My mother replied in her neat handwriting. Emily has a severe flu. She'll be back soon. Signed and sealed like an official document. When I returned, I was thinner, paler, quieter than ever. Miss Susan looked at me differently. I felt she knew something was wrong, but I wasn't ready to speak yet. At 11, I tried to run away for the first time. I packed a few things into a grocery bag, a change of clothes, an old toothbrush, and the cloth doll I'd had since I was little. I waited until they were asleep, then tried the bedroom window. It was nailed shut. I tried the front door, locked with a key. In their bedroom, I tried the kitchen. Same thing. The whole house was like a prison. I wasn't surprised no one suspected anything. No one could get in. And I couldn't get out. Perfect for what was going on there. I cried quietly, sitting on the kitchen floor with that pathetic bag on my lap. No way out. Never. Just then, I noticed the broom still there, leaning in the corner as always, my tool of torture, his weapon against me. I felt a hatred I'd never felt before, a burning rage inside me. I picked up the broom. I thought about smashing it, throwing it in the yard, hiding it, anything for one peaceful night. But as soon as I touched it, I heard footsteps. What are you doing? My father stood in the kitchen doorway, in his pajamas, hair messy, eyes bloodshot. He'd gotten up for water, and he saw me there with the broom in my hand. What happened next was the worst yet. Not just the broom. It was the belt. It was the punches. He beat me until I blacked out. I woke up the next morning on the kitchen floor, bruised so badly I couldn't open one eye. My mother found me there. She looked and sighed. "See what you've done. Look at the mess you've made. The blame, always the blame, as if I, a child, was responsible for his sickness, as if I'd chosen it. That day and the next, I didn't go to school. I only returned when the bruises faded more. They made up a story that I'd fallen down the stairs. We didn't even have stairs. Our house was one story, but no one questioned it. Her complicity grew clearer over time. It wasn't just neglect anymore. It was active participation. She started creating situations and excuses. She'd complain to my father that I hadn't swept the yard properly, that I hadn't answered her, that I'd taken too long with my homework. "Emily needs correcting. Robert, it's the rule. Correcting. Disgusting." I started to realize she enjoyed it, not the act itself. At least I want to believe that. But the power it gave her, seeing me punished for nothing wrong, watching me suffer while she stood by, superior, righteous, clean. One afternoon, I came home from school and found her acting strange, excited, dressed up nicely. She'd put on the dress she usually wore only to church. "We're going to your Aunt Margaret's today," she announced. "Your father's working late. We'll have dinner there too." Aunt Margaret wasn't even a real aunt. She was my mother's friend across town. We rarely went. I didn't understand the sudden change, but I felt a flicker of hope. A night away from home. A night without him. A night of peace. I got ready quickly, brushed my hair, even tried to smile. The thought of leaving those walls, even for a few hours, was like water in the desert. We were almost out the door when my father came home earlier than usual. He looked at us, all set to leave. "Where do you two think you're going?" "To Margaret's," my mother answered, her voice submissive. "Just for dinner? We'll be back early." "No, I've changed my mind. I need you both here." And that was it. She didn't even argue. She took off her hat, her little coat, and went back to the kitchen to prepare dinner. As if it meant nothing. As if her promise of a night of relief for her daughter was worthless. That night, I cried into my pillow until I fell asleep. Not just from the abuse that happened as it always did. Almost every night. I cried from the betrayal. From how easily she gave up protecting me. From the certainty that between him and me, she always chose him. At 12, I'd lost all hope. I lived on autopilot. I went to school, came home, endured the abuse, slept, woke up, and repeated it all like a ghost. The teachers noticed something was wrong. Of course, my grades, already poor, got worse. I barely spoke, barely ate, looked like a ghost wandering the halls. I remember one time the PE teacher called my mother to school. I'd refused to change for gym. I didn't want anyone to see the bruises on my legs. The teacher thought it was odd, insisted, and I cried in the corner of the yard. "Mrs. Robert, Emily's been acting very strangely. She won't participate, won't join the others. She's had a breakdown in my class. What's going on?" I peeked from the door, listening to the conversation in the teacher's office. I saw my mother, neat as always. Hair perfectly pinned, nails clean, face saintly. Emily's always been a difficult child. Since she was little, she's caused trouble. She's a liar, makes up stories, seeks attention. But the bruises, she falls, trips, bumps into things. I don't know where she gets this clumsiness from. Neither your father nor I are like that. The teacher seemed like she wanted to say more, but she gave up. My mother had a way about her, you know, making people doubt what they were seeing, twisting the truth with such conviction that even you started to believe it. We went home in silence that day. When we got there, she finally spoke. "Are you satisfied? You almost embarrassed me at school. What will they think of me, of our family?" I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Her embarrassment meant more than my pain. Always. That night, for the first time, she watched from close up, sitting on a chair in the corner of the room, observing as my father used the broom, her eyes never leaving me. A warning gaze, threatening, as if to say, "See what happens when you try to tell someone." That was the worst night of my life up to that point. Not because of the physical pain by then. I'd grown numb to that. Worse, because of the symbolism. The final confirmation that no one was on my side, that the two of them were a wall I couldn't break through. I never tried to tell anyone at school again. Why would I? My mother would deny it. She'd make me look crazy, a liar, troubled, and the punishment would be worse. So, I closed in even more, became an empty shell. I learned to leave my body during the abuse, to pretend I was somewhere else, that I was someone else. I learned not to cry, because tears only made them enjoy it more. I learned to be invisible, even when I was seen. Time passed. When I was 12, then 13, my body changed, and the abuse got worse. Now there was a new worry pregnancy. My father took precautions in his own brutal, humiliating, painful ways. My mother helped, checking my underwear every month to make sure I'd had my period. "If you get pregnant, I'll throw you out," she threatened, as if it was my choice, as if I had any control over my life. At 13, something shifted. Not in the circumstances, they stayed the same. But in me, I started feeling a different kind of anger. Not just despair, but something deeper, more dangerous. I began thinking of ways to end it all ways. I thought about suicide. I came close to it many times. I saved up pills my mother took for her blood pressure. I stole a jar of rat poison my father kept in the garage shed. I'd stare at the Cumberland River when I crossed the bridge, imagining the water swallowing me, taking me far away. But something stopped me. It wasn't fear of death. I was almost dead anyway. It was a stubbornness, a small but persistent certainty that I didn't deserve that end, that they should pay, not me. It wasn't until I was 13 that I finally understood a key detail about my prison. My mother wasn't a victim with me. She was a guard. She was an accomplice. She helped my father not because she loved me, but because she hated me. Maybe because I was living proof of their marital problems. Maybe because I was the reason she couldn't leave that house and start over. Maybe because deep down, she simply lacked what people call maternal instinct. The reason didn't matter. The truth was, she wasn't on my side. She never had been and never would be. That realization, painful as it was, freed me because I knew I couldn't rely on her to get out, that I needed another way. another person, another path. And that's when I remembered Miss Susan's words. If you need to talk, I'm here. Was she really there? Was there anyone in the world who truly had my back? Was it worth the risk? I didn't have much to lose. If I stayed in that house with those monsters, I wouldn't survive much longer. If I tried to speak and things got worse, at least I'd tried. That night, lying in bed after another session of abuse, I made my decision. I would talk to Miss Susan. I would tell her everything. No holding back, no hints, just the bare truth. The worst that could happen is no one believed me. The best I didn't even dare imagine. Freedom seemed like a distant dream. I fell asleep after deciding the next day I would go through with it. What I didn't know was that Miss Susan had her own demons and weapons to fight them. Have you ever noticed how one decision can change everything? How a simple yes or no can flip your life upside down? That's how it went on that April Wednesday in 1967. I, Emily Harper, at 13, with the weight of the world on my soul, got out of bed determined to do what I'd never done before. Shout the truth. I woke up before the alarm. Not because I'd slept well. Sleep was a luxury I hadn't known in years. But that day, there was a different tingling in my body, a mix of fear and bravery I'd never felt before. I prepared carefully. I picked the only dress without patches that I had, the least faded blouse. I brushed my hair slowly, looking in the cracked mirror in the bathroom. Who was that hollow-eyed girl staring back at me? I hardly recognized myself anymore. Emily, you're taking too long. My mother's voice came through the door, always checking, always controlling. I'll be right there, I answered mechanically. That's when I noticed something odd in my reflection. An expression I hadn't seen in a long time. Determination. I looked like a different person. I looked older, stronger. I looked like someone who could change her own story. Breakfast was like every other breakfast. Dry toast, weak coffee, heavy silence. My father had left for the county office. My mother was getting ready for school where she taught. We ate without talking, as usual. Before I left, she reminded me, as always, go straight home after school. Don't talk to anyone on the way. If you're late, you know what's waiting for you. I nodded, lowering my head as I always did. But inside, for the first time, I thought, no, today I won't obey. Today, everything changes. The walk to school never felt so long. It was only about 15 minutes, but that day, each step felt significant, decisive, like each one brought me closer not just to school, but to freedom. I arrived earlier than usual. The halls were still empty, classrooms closed. I sat on a bench in the yard, waiting. My hands were sweaty. What if she didn't believe me? What if she told my mother? What if things got worse? The fear was real. I had good reason to feel it. But the determination was stronger. I'd reached a point where any change, even if worse, seemed better than staying in that hell. The bell rang. Students started arriving, noisy, free, so different from me. I watched the normal kids with normal lives. Was any of them going through what I was? Was there another like me, trapped in a prison with monster parents? History class was third period. I endured the first two mechanically, answering when called, copying from the board, existing without living. Finally, it came. Miss Susan walked in, books in hand, glasses sliding down her nose. She greeted the class with her usual humor. She started talking about the Civil War, dates, battles, names. I didn't hear a word. My head was too busy rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd say it, planning every word of the conversation that could change everything. Class ended. The bell rang. Now or never. While the other students noisily left for recess, I stayed in my seat, frozen, waiting until everyone was gone. Of course, Miss Susan noticed. She looked at me through her glasses with that knowing way she had. When the last student left, she closed the door. She came to my desk, pulled up a chair, and sat down in front of me. "What's wrong? Emily, do you want to talk?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Years of enforced silence had locked my tongue. Years of threats made me hesitate. "You don't have to be afraid," she said, her voice calm. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." I took a deep breath. Now was the time. "My father abuses me," I said straight out. "It's been going on for years." The words spilled out fast, almost without breathing, as if I stopped to think. I wouldn't say them. I expected shock on her face, disbelief, disgust. Some reaction normal people have to something so awful. But I saw none of that. I saw understanding, as if she already knew, or worse, as if she knew it herself. "How does he do it? Emily, can you tell me it's important?" It was the first time anyone asked for details without doubting me, without making me feel guilty, without wondering if I was making it up. And so I told her. I told her about the broom, the years of pain, how my mother watched and participated. I told her about the threats, the constant fear, the prison that was my home. I told her everything, unfiltered, without stopping. The words rushed out like water from a broken dam, fierce, uncontrollable, devastating. When I finished, I was gasping, exhausted, as if I'd run a marathon. In a way, I had a 5-year marathon and I'd finally crossed the finish line. Miss Susan didn't say anything for a moment. Her eyes behind those big glasses were teary. But it wasn't just sadness I saw there. It was controlled anger, a righteous fury. "I believe you," she finally said. Each word deliberate, 3 simple words that changed everything. "I believe you," when no one else did, not even my own mother. This teacher, whom I barely knew, gave me what I needed most validation. "It's not your fault. Emily," she continued, "not your fault. They're the monsters. Not you." I cried, not from pain, as I'd cried so many times, but from relief, from the weight finally being shared, from the truth finally being spoken and accepted. "Now what?" I asked through sobs. "Now we'll get you out of there. Get me out of there." The idea seemed so impossible, so out of reach, that I could hardly grasp it. Where would I go? What if they don't let me? What if no one believes me? The questions tumbled out uncontrollably. Fear flooded back, mixed with a tiny spark of hope that was growing. "One step at a time," she said firmly. "First, we need evidence." "Evidence?" "Yes, I know it's hard, but we have to prove what's happening. Your word against theirs. Unfortunately, that's not enough. Proof like what? The bruises. We need to document them." And she hesitated. as if making a tough decision. "I need to tell you something, Emily, something few people know." I waited, curious despite the fear. "When I was your age, I went through something similar. Not my father, but my stepfather. And my mother, like yours, pretended not to see." My eyes widened. Miss Susan, the most respected teacher in school with her proper manner, always prepared lessons. Seemingly perfect life. "How did you get out? How did you manage?" She smiled, a sad smile. "I didn't. Not the right way. I ran away. I lived on the streets for a while. I was hungry and cold. Eventually, a family took me in and let me sleep in their shed in exchange for work. I studied in secret, got my GED, became a teacher. But I never reported it. I never saw justice served. And my stepfather died years later without ever paying for what he did. My mother lived the rest of her life pretending nothing happened. To this day, she avoids talking to me, a living reminder of her failure as a mother. I took it all in silently. Miss Susan, the strongest woman I knew, had been an abused girl too. And here she was, whole, helping others. That's why you're so invested in my case. Yes, I recognized the signs, the empty look, the explained bruises, the constant fear. I saw myself in you. And now, what are we going to do? She adjusted her glasses, thoughtful. "I'm not letting you go down the same path. I'm not letting you run away without guidance or protection. We'll do it differently. We'll do it right." "The right way? Does that exist in cases like mine?" "I have a friend, a lawyer. He works on child abuse cases. I'll talk to him today. But we need evidence. Emily, something concrete. I can show you the bruises," I offered. "I have marks everywhere." She nodded, her face serious. "That helps. But ideally, we'd catch them in the act, something they can't deny. Catch them." The thought made me shiver. That meant enduring another abuse, another horror with the broom. More pain. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I know. And if you don't want to, we'll find another way. But think about this. This could be your only chance to truly end it, to bring justice, not just for you, but maybe for other kids they could hurt in the future. Other kids." I hadn't thought of that. What if they took in another child after I left? What if they did to another girl what they did to me? What do I need to do? She explained the plan to me. It was risky, dangerous, but it could work. "Are you sure you want to do this? I'll be honest, it's going to be hard. You'll have to go through it one more time." "If it's the last time, it's worth it," I replied, with a firmness in my voice I didn't recognize. "If it's to end this once and for all, I can endure one more night." She squeezed my hand, a simple gesture of human connection, the first genuine touch I'd had in years. "You're so brave, Emily, braver than I was at your age." I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified, but also, for the first time, hopeful. I had a plan. I had an ally. I had a chance. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went home after school as usual. I did my homework, helped in the kitchen, acted just like every other day. Inside, I was trembling. Inside, I was counting the hours. My father came home. We had dinner in silence as always. My mother talked about school, about teacher meetings. He talked about the county office, about asphalt bids. Normal family conversation. The pretense of it all, the act they put on even for themselves, made me sick. How could they? How could they pretend we were a normal family when at night? He came to my room with a broom in hand after dinner. They told me to bathe and go to bed. I obeyed. I lay in bed, heart racing, hands sweaty. Would this work? Would this really be my last night in that hell? Around 10 p.m., I heard his footsteps in the hall, the door creaking open, the broom leaning against the wall. "Get up." His voice, as always, cold, commanding, from a man who knew he'd be obeyed. I obeyed as I always did. I glanced one last time at the window, at the night outside, at the freedom that might finally be within reach. It was time. Time to end it all. What happened in the next 2 hours was as horrific as ever. The difference was, this time, it had a purpose. Every second of pain brought me closer to freedom. Every tear that fell fueled my resolve. And when he left the room, satisfied after another night of torture, I didn't feel defeated as I always had. I felt victorious. Because I knew this was the last time that man touched me, the last time that broom hurt me, the last time the plan played out, and nothing would ever be the same. The next day, I went to school as usual, except this time, I carried more than books in my backpack. I carried the evidence we needed and the certainty that I was about to break the chains that had held me for so long. Miss Susan was waiting for me at the school entrance. In her eyes, I saw the same determination I felt in myself. We weren't just teacher and student anymore. We were comrades in battle, survivors of a war many pretended didn't exist. "Are you ready?" she asked. I took a deep breath. A world of possibilities opened before me. A world without brooms, without pain, without betrayal, more than ready, together. We walked into the school, away from the nightmare and toward the freedom I dreamed of for so long. The silent girl had finally spoken, and that voice, after years of silence, was ready to be heard. I made it to school with a new resolve. My body ached from the night before, but with a new strength inside, backpack on my shoulder, not just filled with notebooks, but with the evidence that would change everything. I met Miss Susan in a secluded corner of the yard where no one could see us. "Did you manage it?" she asked, worry etched on her furrowed brow. I pulled out a wrapped cloth from my backpack. Inside was the evidence we needed, a disgusting, horrific, but necessary piece, the very broom that had been used on me the night before, with marks that left no doubt about what had happened. "Oh my," Miss Susan murmured. Her eyes widened behind her glasses, and he didn't notice it was missing. I replaced it with a similar one I found in the school's storage room last week. So far, they haven't noticed. It was a risky plan. For weeks. I'd been watching the school's supply closet. I noticed some old brooms gathering dust there. One day, when the janitor left it open, I took one, hid it in my backpack, brought it home, and after the abuse the night before, I swapped it out while everyone was asleep. A dangerous move that could have gone very wrong if anyone woke up. But they didn't. And now we had it. The undeniable proof of what happened in that yellow house. We had so much more. I showed her the recent bruises, the marks on my thighs and back, in places that couldn't be explained by accidents or falls. I took secret photos with the camera that Miss Susan had lent me just a few days before. She said I was very brave, and we were storing the evidence in a special file. Now it was my turn to do my part. We agreed on the next steps. I would go home after school as usual, like nothing had changed. I'd stick to my normal routine. Meanwhile, Miss Susan would take the evidence to her lawyer friend. They'd go to the police, to the juvenile court, to anyone else necessary. The juvenile court, to anyone else who needed to know. How long would it take, I asked, feeling worried. The thought of spending another night in that house made me shiver. I'll do my best to make it happen today. But it might take a little longer. It depends on the bureaucracy and the people involved. Can you hold on just a bit more? Of course I can. I'd endured it for 5 years. I could handle a few more hours, knowing it was all about to end. Just be careful not to let them notice anything different. Keep acting normal. If they suspect something's changed. She didn't need to finish the sentence. I knew what would happen if they did. They suspected. The scars from my last escape attempt reminded me I would pretend like nothing had changed. I promised. Do everything as usual. That day at school passed in a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. My mind was too busy with what was coming. With the possibility of real freedom, with the fear that something might go wrong. When the bell rang for the last class, I felt a chill in my stomach. It was time to go back to the yellow house, maybe for the last time. On the way, everything seemed different. The same streets as always, but seen through new eyes. The same neighbours waving, but with a different perspective. Did they know? Did they suspect? Or did they really believe we were a normal, happy family? I got home at the usual time. My mother was there, grading papers at the kitchen table. She looked at me over her glasses. Get ready. Your father will be home early today. Some folks from the state capital are coming to visit. Visitors. That was rare. For a moment, I wondered if that would complicate the plan. But maybe it would be for the best. With people in the house, they couldn't do anything to me. At least for one night, I'd be safe. I got ready as instructed. I put on the blue dress I wore for special occasions. It was really the only one besides my school uniform that still fit. I brushed my hair and washed my face. In the mirror, I saw the same girl as always, but her eyes were different. They sparkled with the newness of someone who knew freedom was coming. My father arrived at 6 o'clock as announced, with a couple I'd never seen before. A man in a suit and an elegant woman. From the capital, as my mother had said. This is Emily. My father introduced me, his hand gripping my shoulder a bit too tightly. A silent warning to behave. Our daughter? What a lovely young girl, the woman said, smiling. How old are you? Dear 13. I answered as politely as I could. Ah, the best age? You're almost a young lady. If only she knew. If only she could imagine that this almost young lady had endured more horrors than many adults. Dinner was a perfect performance. My mother served with a smile. My father told stories about the town, local politics. The couple laughed, complimented the food. asked questions, a picture of a normal family that made me want to be sick. At one point, I noticed the man watching me with curiosity, not the disgusting look I'd seen in others, the predatory gaze that my father had. It was a different kind, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "And you, Emily, do you like school?" The question surprised me. It was rare for anyone to care about what I thought or felt. "Yes, sir. I like learning." "Oh, what's your favorite subject, history?" I answered without hesitation. "Miss Susan's class." The only one where I felt safe. Ah, history. Essential for understanding the present and building the future. Isn't it? I nodded, not sure exactly what to say. I wasn't used to casual conversations. Emily will become a teacher like her mother. My father interrupted, steering the conversation. "She's already on that path. Isn't that right, daughter?" We'd never talked about this. We'd never discussed my future. How could we? In their world, I didn't have one. I was just an object, a possession. "Yes, father," I replied, eyes downcast as expected. The conversation went on, now focusing on other topics: politics, economics, the governor's planned visit, adult subjects that didn't include the quiet girl at the table. After dinner, I was sent to my room while they continued talking in the living room. I obeyed, relieved to escape that theatre. In my room, I sat on the bed, looking out the window. The night was clear, full of stars. I wondered if I'd soon be gazing at those stars from somewhere else, a place without fear. I was almost drifting off when I heard a noise at the front door, loud voices, someone knocking. My heart raced. I crept to my bedroom door, trying to listen. What did this mean? My father's voice changed. "He can't just come into my house like this. We have a warrant, Mr. Payne," a stern, unfamiliar voice. I held my breath. It was happening. The plan had worked. They were here to save me. The next few minutes were chaotic. Voices rising, my mother crying, doors slamming. Then a knock on my bedroom door. "Emily, are you in there?" A woman's voice I didn't recognize. "Yes," I answered, my voice trembling. "Can you open the door? We're from Child Protective Services. We're here to help you." I opened it with shaking hands. On the other side was a middle-aged woman with greying hair and a gentle expression. Behind her were 2 police officers. "Hello, Emily. I'm Dr. Claire. We're here to take you away." "Okay, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to go back to this house if you don't want to." I couldn't answer. Tears streamed down endlessly, not from fear or sadness, but from relief, from being set free. "Do you want to grab your things, whatever you need?" "I don't have much. A few clothes, a notebook, an old rag doll. It all fit in a small bag." "Is that all?" Dr. Claire asked, surprised by how little I had. "That's all I need?" I replied. Truly, in the living room, the scene was surreal. My father, who was always powerful and terrifying, was handcuffed. My mother was crying in the corner, being questioned by another officer. The couple who had visited, now I understood they weren't just ordinary guests, watched everything with serious faces. When they saw me, my parents reacted in opposite ways. My mother avoided my eyes, unable to face me. My father glared at me, full of hatred. "You liar, ungrateful, after all we've done for you." "Quiet," "Sir," one of the officers ordered, "you're in enough trouble as it is." Dr. Claire led me through the house, gently placing her hand on my back. We passed the kitchen. I noticed that in the corner where the broom always stood, there was now just empty space. The evidence had been collected. As we left the house, my eyes met my mother's one last time. I saw no regret or love there, only fear. Fear of the scandal, the shame, what the neighbours would say. Even at the end, her concerns weren't for me. "Let's go. Emily." Dr. Claire guided me to a government car parked out front. I got in without looking back. The yellow house, my prison for so many years, grew smaller in the rearview mirror. Along with it, a whole life of suffering. In the car, I sat among people I barely knew, but they treated me more humanely than my own parents ever had. Finally, I breathed a deep sigh, like I was taking my first real breath in a long time. "Where are we going?" I asked, realizing I didn't know what came next. "First to the hospital." Dr. Claire explained. "We need to check you over. Then we'll take you to a safe place. A temporary shelter until we sort everything out." Hospital. Shelter. Those words might have scared me once, but now they sounded like music. Anywhere was better than the yellow house. "What about my parents?" "Your father will be held in custody, and my mother, well, that depends on the investigation and your testimony." My testimony. My words, finally, had weight, were finally being heard, considered, and believed. There was a teacher. I started hesitantly. "Miss Susan. She helped me. I want to see her." "Yes, we know Miss Susan. In fact, she's waiting for us at the hospital. She was the one who brought your case to us." I smiled for the first time in a long while. Miss Susan had kept her promise. She'd helped me escape in a way she couldn't when she was young. The hospital was big, bright, and full of people. They took me to a private room where a doctor examined me carefully and respectfully. She photographed the wounds, noted everything, asked the hard but necessary questions. When she finished, she said words I'll never forget. "You're so strong. Emily, stronger than many adults I know." I didn't feel strong. I felt small, scared, and lost. But for the first time in years, I felt safe. After the exam, they led me to another room, and there was Miss Susan, her hair tied back as usual, glasses perched on her nose, a tired but satisfied smile. "You did it." I ran to hug her, something I'd never done before. "No, Emily, we did it. I just handled the hard part." We hugged for a moment. Two survivors from the same kind of hell. Two generations bonded by pain, but also by hope for better days. "What happened?" I asked, when we finally pulled apart. "How did everything move so fast?" She told me over a light meal someone had brought. She said she'd taken the broom and the photos to her lawyer friend, who was horrified and went straight to juvenile court, where they found a judge sensitive to abuse cases. That judge, upon seeing the irrefutable evidence, immediately issued a search warrant and seizure order, a preventive arrest for my father, and a decision that my mother had to leave the home until her involvement was clarified. And you know that couple who were at your house, they were undercover social workers. They were there to observe the family's dynamics before the police arrived. It was a coincidence they showed up that day. Your father had invited them for a meeting about a district project. In the end, the meeting worked out perfectly for the operation. That's why that man was looking at me in that odd way. He wasn't judging me. He was assessing me, looking for signs of abuse, fear, and suffering. And now what will happen to me? Now, you'll go to a shelter. But she hesitated, like she wasn't sure if she should continue. I spoke with the judge. I requested to be appointed as your temporary guardian. If you want, of course. I was speechless, living with Miss Susan. That was more than I could have hoped for, more than I dared dream. You do that for me. I do it for you. Emily, it's not charity, it's justice. It gives you the chance I didn't have when I was in your situation. I bit my lip to hold back the tears. I was already out of them anyway. I felt empty and full at the same time, empty of fear, full of possibility. I want that. I want it so much. She smiled, that gentle smile that had given me hope from the start. Then we'll ask the judge. I'm sure she'll take it seriously. That night, I slept in a room at the shelter. It was simple, with a few beds, other girls in situations like mine, but it was clean and safe. And for the first time in years, I slept without fear. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, I was disoriented. Where was I? Why wasn't I in the dark room of the yellow house? And then I remembered. I was free. The nightmare was over. The other girls were getting ready for breakfast. Some looked at me curiously, others indifferently, each with their own story, their own traumas. We were different, but the same survivors. That day, I was taken to give my official testimony at the Child Protection Office. It was tough, painful, recounting everything again to strangers, seeing their horrified, sympathetic, sometimes doubtful reactions. But I did it. I told it all without holding back the broom, the nights, my mother's watching, the years of forced silence. When I finished, the detective, a middle-aged man who looked like a father from a normal family, said something that stuck with me. Your testimony will help convict them, Emily. But more importantly, it will help save other children. Your courage is opening doors for more reports. I didn't feel courageous. I just felt relieved to be away from them, to finally speak, to finally be heard. In the afternoon, I got a surprise visit at the shelter. Dr. Claire, the social worker, came with Miss Susan, and a woman I soon learned was the judge in my case. Emily, the judge said after introducing herself, I've reviewed your case urgently. Given the severity and the clear risk of keeping you in the family environment, I've granted temporary custody to Miss Susan. Of course. If you agree. I looked at Miss Susan, and she smiled and nodded nervously. She really wanted to take me in, care for me, be my family. I agree. More than agree. The judge smiled, relieved. Good. You can leave today. We'll continue the legal process. Of course. There will be more testimonies, hearings. Your parents have the right to defend themselves, but you don't have to see them again unless you want to. I don't want to. I never want to see those faces or hear those voices again. I want to forget. Start over. Be reborn. Can we go? I asked. anxious. "Yes," Miss Susan replied. "Let's go home." Home. That word had a new meaning now. It wasn't about fear, pain, or prison anymore. It was a promise of something different, a new chance. I packed my things and said goodbye to the other girls at the shelter. Some didn't react, lost in their own traumas. Others smiled and wished me luck. One older girl hugged me and whispered, "Don't forget us out there." I won't. How could I now? They were part of my story, part of my journey. In the car to Miss Susan's house, I looked out the window. The streets seemed different. The whole town felt changed, more colourful, vibrant, full of possibilities. "Are you ready for your new life, Emily?" Miss Susan asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I took a deep breath. A life without the broom, without screams in the night, without my mother's betrayal. A life with school, dreams, and a future. I was more ready than I'd ever been. And so my new journey began. The road wouldn't be easy. I had a lot to process, to heal, to learn. But at least now I had a path away from hell toward the light. And for the first time since I could remember, I had hope. Hope that my life ahead would be better than what I left behind. The yellow house was in the past, and the future finally seemed worth living. If you ask me what freedom smells like, I'd say it's the scent of damp earth after rain. That's what I felt on my first day at Miss Susan's house when I woke up and saw the window open and unlocked. No bars. The fresh morning dampness filling the room. The smell of a new beginning, of freshness, of a fresh life. Miss Susan's house wasn't big or fancy, a simple 2-story home in the teacher's neighborhood with 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a cozy kitchen, and a backyard full of greens. But it was clean, bright, and filled with books in every corner. And most importantly, no monsters lurking behind doors. The first few days were strange. I didn't know how to act in a normal house. I kept waiting for permission for everything. For going to the bathroom, for getting a drink, for sitting down. On the second day, I accidentally broke a glass during lunch. I panicked, curled up, waiting for punishment. The broom, the yelling, but nothing came. Just Miss Susan's calm voice. "Let me clean that up, dear. It's nothing. Breaking glass happens." That day, I cried a lot, not because of the glass, but because of the normalcy. Because I had the right to be a girl who breaks a glass, not some wretched thing deserving punishment, as my father always said. The weeks that followed were about adapting, learning to live without fear, understanding that not all adults want to hurt you, that not all mothers abandon you, that not all fathers abuse you. The first night I slept without nightmares was almost a month after my escape. I woke up feeling rested, confused by the peace. I dreamed of a flower field, not the broom. It was so strange that I lay there for a while, trying to grasp what was different. "That's how normal children sleep," Miss Susan said when I told her at breakfast. "That's your right, Emily. It was always your right." Such a strange concept for a girl who only knew duty, obligation, and punishment. I went back to school after 2 weeks at home. It was hard facing the stairs. The town was small. Everyone knew about the case, as they called it, the district inspector's scandal of the moment. Some looked at me with pity, others with morbid curiosity, and even some with anger, like I'd ruined my parents' lives instead of the other way around. But there were also those who smiled, quietly supportive, a hand on my shoulder, a candy on my desk, a spot saved at recess. The pain slowly turned into strength. Every day at Miss Susan's was a day of healing. Every class, every stress-free meal, every fear-free night helped me rebuild myself. The case against my parents dragged on. Testimonies, hearings, expert evaluations. The system was slow, especially in a small town in the 60s. My father's influence made it even slower. He had friends, connections, people who owed him favors. "Don't give up," Miss Susan would say on nights when the fear crept back. "The truth will win." And it did. 6 months after I escaped, my father was sentenced to 15 years in prison. My mother got 8 years for complicity. These were some of the first harsh sentences for child abuse in the area. A milestone, a victory not just for me, but for other children to come. On the day of the sentencing, I learned that 3 other girls had come forward with similar situations in their homes. Dr. Claire told us during a visit that my example had given them courage. "You've opened a door that's been locked for too long." At 14, I started therapy, Miss Susan insisted, even though it wasn't common back then. "Wounds on the body heal on their own. Wounds in the soul need help," she explained. It was the most important decision in my recovery. In sessions with Dr. Dorothy, a psychologist who came from Nashville to Springfield every 2 weeks, I finally talked about it all. The physical pain, my mother's betrayal, the guilt I still carried, even knowing I did nothing wrong. "It wasn't your fault, Emily," she repeated in every session. "You were just a child. The responsibility was theirs." At first, I didn't believe it. Years of brainwashing are hard to wash away. But slowly, the truth sank in. It was never my fault. I was the victim, not the guilty one. Temporary custody became permanent on my 15th birthday. Miss Susan threw a small party, my first ever. A simple cake, a few school friends, some impromptu decorations. They sang happy birthday, hugged me, made me feel like I was building a normal life, or as normal as it could be after everything. "From now on, you're officially my daughter," Miss Susan said, handing me the court papers. "If you want..." Of course I do. Of course I did. That woman had risked everything for me, faced a system, a town, an outdated mindset to save me. If that isn't motherhood, what is time past? By 16-17, I graduated high school with top grades, encouraged by Miss Susan. I decided to go to college. "You can be anything you want. Emily, the world is ahead of you." The whole world. What a difference from when I thought my world was limited to 4 walls of the yellow house. At 18, I applied to law school in Nashville. I got in. It was the greatest joy of my life up to that point. I was going to study to become a lawyer, to protect other Emilys who weren't lucky enough to find a Miss Susan on their path. "I'm so proud of you," she said, tears in her eyes when the acceptance letter arrived. So proud. Moving to Nashville was a big challenge. I'd never left Springfield. I'd never seen a big city. I'd never taken a long bus ride. I was scared, but also excited. It was a fresh start, another chance. The nightmares, which had lessened a lot, came back in the first few weeks away. I dreamed of my father escaping prison and finding me. I'd wake up sweating and shaking. I'd call Miss Susan from the payphone in my dorm. "He can't reach you. Emily," she'd reassure me. "He's in prison. He'll be there for years. You're safe." Gradually, college and the new city distracted me. New friends, new experiences, and even new pains. But these were normal adult pains, not destructive ones. In college, I met Daniel, a tall, lanky journalism student with glasses. We met at a student centre party. We danced, talked, and laughed. Being with him felt easy, natural. On our third date, when he tried to kiss me, I froze. My whole body remembered other hands, other touches, other moments. He noticed my fear and pulled back immediately. "It's okay. Emily, we'll go at your pace. No rush." A week later, I told him about the yellow house, the broom, the escape. I'd never told anyone besides the case people and my therapist. But I felt I could trust him. He listened to it all without interrupting. When I finished, his eyes were wet. "You're the strongest person I've ever met," he said simply. I didn't feel strong. I felt broken, incomplete, always fighting ghosts. But maybe he saw something in me that I couldn't. Our relationship progressed slowly, with lots of talks, his patience, and my therapy work to separate intimacy from violence, to understand that closeness could be beautiful, consensual, and respectful. We graduated the same year. I got my law degree with honours. He landed a job at a newspaper in the capital. We had a simple wedding in Nashville. Of course, Miss Susan was there, walking me down the aisle. "I'm giving you away to someone else," she joked, but there was a hint of worry in her eyes. "It's different this time, Mom," I assured her. "This time, I chose. That's the big difference. For the first time in my life, I had the choice, the decision, the control over my own path." Our life in Nashville was peaceful for years. I opened a small law firm specializing in family law. Daniel advanced at the newspaper and became an editor. We bought a house. We had 2 kids, Nathan and Sophie, a normal, healthy, happy family. Of course, not everything was perfect. The nightmares never fully went away. There were days when memories flooded back in full force. Days when I couldn't stand even Daniel's touch. Days when I cried for no clear reason. But they became rarer and less painful. The therapy I kept up for years gave me tools to handle the past without letting it rule the present. In 1988, when my kids were 8 and 6, I got news that shocked me. My father had died in prison of a heart attack. I didn't know how to feel. It wasn't relief, sadness, or anger. It was a strange emptiness, like a part of my story had closed without resolution. "Do you want to go to the funeral?" Daniel asked. I don't need to." To me, that man had died long ago. 2 years later, my mother, now out of prison and living in another town, tried to contact me. She sent a letter to my office asking for forgiveness, saying she was ill and wanted to see me one last time before she passed. I was torn. Part of me wanted to tell her to go away. Another part, maybe the one therapy helped grow, wanted to understand, to listen, and to close that cycle somehow. After thinking it over, I decided to go, not for her, but for me. I needed to look her in the eye one last time and tell her I'd survived, that I was okay, that she hadn't destroyed me. I found a woman aged beyond her years in a hospital room in Knoxville. Terminal cancer. Thin hair, faded and sparse, almost unrecognizable from the domineering Elaine who terrorized me as a child. "Emily, you've come," she said as I entered. Her voice was weak and halting. "I have, but not for you. Let's just be quiet for a moment." How could I say anything to the woman who brought me into the world and let it become hell? I know I don't deserve forgiveness. She finally spoke. "I don't even ask for it. I just want you to know that not a day goes by that I don't think about what I did, what I let happen. Why? That's the only question that matters. Why did you let him do that? Why didn't you protect me?" She looked away. "I was afraid of him, afraid of losing the little I had, like my job, the house, my security. But that's only part of the truth. The rest is that I didn't love you the way a mother should. You weren't planned, weren't wanted, and I blamed you instead of myself. It was wrong and horrible." Her honesty surprised me. I expected excuses, but I got this raw confession. I thought I'd feel something seeing her like that. Maybe satisfaction or poetic justice. But I felt nothing. She had no power over me anymore. She was just a sick woman about to die alone. Tears ran down her wrinkled face. "It's fair. It's more than I deserve." I left that room without looking back. 2 weeks later, she passed away. I didn't go to the funeral. I felt no regret, no anger, no resentment, just peace, like a circle had closed. Life went on. The kids grew up. I became a grandmother. Miss Susan left us in 1995 at 73. She passed peacefully in her sleep. No suffering, no drama, just as she deserved. She was my salvation. I told her the last time we met, just 2 days before she died. "No, Emily, you were your own salvation. I just showed you the way." Maybe she was right. In the end, it was my courage to speak up, report, and seek help that saved me. But without her, without someone who believed me, would it have made a difference? At 60, when I retired, I decided to do something different. I opened a small traditional candy shop in downtown Springfield, where I'd returned after Daniel passed. The candies are made from Miss Susan's recipes, which she taught me everything she knew in the kitchen. Soft caramels, crunchy peanut brittle, pecan pralines, treats from my second childhood, my real one worth remembering. The shop became a gathering place. Many people came not just for the sweets, but to talk, listen to stories, and share their own. And surprisingly, many of those stories were like mine. I started to realize that my case, unfortunately, wasn't unique. So many women of my generation and later ones had endured similar abuses. That silence was a shared prison. At 67, I accepted an invitation to speak about my story at the local school. It was my first time sharing publicly. I was nervous, scared, but determined. If my story could give one girl the courage to speak up, it would be worth it. That talk led to more invitations. Soon, I was traveling the state, speaking at schools, colleges, and support groups. My story, which had been my shame for so long, became the foundation to help others. I founded a support group in Springfield, which we called Voices in Silence. Women of all ages from all walks of life shared experiences, healed together, and strengthened each other. And now, at 71, I've decided to make these videos to share my story with even more people. Because even after all these years, even with societal changes, there are still children trapped in yellow houses across America. There are still uncaring parents who turn a blind eye. In kitchen corners, there are still brooms that make girls tremble. If you're watching this and see yourself in any part of my story, I want you to know you're not alone. It's not your fault. And there is a way out. It may seem impossible now. It may feel like no one will believe you, no one will help. But I promise you, there's a Miss Susan out there. Someone who will believe and reach out. The yellow house is in the past. Instead, I've built a life full of color, with genuine affection, respect, and dignity. You can too. And if you're watching and know a child showing signs of abuse, suddenly quiet, with unexplained bruises, always afraid, be their Miss Susan. Ask, believe, and help. You might be their only chance. Today, my shop in the square is still open. My grandchildren have given me great-grandchildren. The yellow house was demolished years ago. In its place, they built a small playground for children. Whenever I pass by, I see kids playing, laughing, free, and I think that finally, that land has found redemption. If you enjoyed my story, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people find these videos and know they're not alone in this fight. Because if there's one thing I've learned in 71 years, it's that humans have an incredible capacity to rebuild, to turn ruins into palaces, to transform horrifying yellow houses into homes full of colorful love. I'm Emily Harper. From victim to survivor, from survivor to warrior, and from warrior to storytelling grandmother. And my story isn't over. As long as there's a child who needs to hear there's hope, as long as there's a woman who needs to know that abuse doesn't define her, my voice will continue. Because freedom smells like damp earth after rain. And after the worst storms, the brightest sun emerges. Until the next video.